Hello, welcome back. We're on day 3 and I'm with Sam Lee, the President and CEO of Northisle Copper. Sam, it's good to be with you again.
Good to see you again, Peter.
You too. I was just recalling back on when we last had a chat. I think it might have been actually 12 months ago in this same spot.
Indeed.
So why don't we just recap what's happened over the last 12 months?
Sure thing. So look, the last 12 months for us have been very, very busy. And I think it was, we set a bold strategy of exploring, finding, developing this vast 35-kilometer region that we have in British Columbia. This is elephant hunting porphyry district territory. And I'm happy to report that over the past 12 months we have made one new discovery, and we've evolved the other discovery that we talked about last year, Northwest Expo, into a full resource and metallurgy. So we've really progressed the company well.
Good, all right, and the share price reflects that?
Indeed, I think people were looking for execution, people understood the strategy, and very happy to be systematically showing that we do what we say we do.
Good. Well, that's what this is all about, yeah. Okay, well, why don't we touch on the resource? Why don't you give us a bit of a flavour as to how large this is starting to look, how impressive?
Yeah, sure. So we start with a massive resource already.
Yeah.
We have about 2.5 billion pounds of copper and indicated, about 5 million ounces of gold and indicated. So this project is about $1.1 billion NPV after tax, 8%. We did this PEA in 2021. It's about 100 million pounds of copper, 100,000 ounces of gold a year. So think of this project as being effectively Mount Milligan. And Mount Milligan is obviously a low-grade, high-tonnage project in British Columbia that is Centerra's cornerstone asset. That's just absolutely cash flowing an immense amount for that company. And that's where we live, British Columbia. The reason why we're able to do that with low-grade, high-tonnage projects is because we have very, very good access to infrastructure, very low power costs, 0.6 cents a kilowatt hour, and we've got access to a great deal of labor. But the challenge has always been, how do you get from here to there, and how do you build a project? How do you deal with something that is a moderate-sized capital intensity project? Well, the answer is through really good exploration. So what we had set out to do a couple of years ago is to find higher grade, higher margin, higher NSR value per ton rock that can displace, or at least bring up front as part of our production schedule, so we could reduce our capital intensity.
Yep.
Right? You could reduce your capital intensity if you have higher margin rock. And so again, I'm very, very happy to say that we've converted that strategy into reality. We came out with our maiden resources for Northwest Expo, where we're seeing over 2 to 3 times the NSR value per ton rock that we have in our higher tonnage, lower grade project. And what that enables us to do is that enables us to now think about starting with a smaller throughput, 20 to 40,000 ton per day project, which we are advancing as part of a PEA, which should be completed by the end of this year and released early next year.
Busy, wow, okay. All right, let's talk about this new high grade resource then.
Yep.
Just give us some high level numbers in terms of the grade, and give us, in terms of the actual pit and the wireframe, what does this look like? What's the depths look like? And the widths?
Absolutely. So the 2021 PEA was about 75,000 tons per day, right? And that, at the time, was a $1.4 billion Canadian capex, quite big. Obviously, there's cost inflations that would be associated, so it would be higher today. So our objective is obviously to start smaller, starting at 20,000 tons per day, potentially 40,000 tons per day, and then moving up and twinning back up to 80,000 tons per day. So it's a very similar model as Blackwater, Artemis Blackwater has done to create this achievable phased approach. And so what's now enabling us to do it are 2 specific projects, Northwest Expo and Red Dog. Red Dog, we already had about 52 million tons of ore, approximately 0.4% copper equivalent. It is more copper dominant. And then on Northwest Expo, which is the resource we just announced in March, we have additional 40 million tons of indicated resources at approximately 0.7 grams per ton. It's a gold dominant. It's about 80% gold, 20% copper, and 0.15% copper grades, which is essentially what Mount Milligan is today. So that yields post recoveries, which we again released in March, of 90% recoveries on the gold and 80% on the copper. That's effectively an NSR value per ton of about $55 to $60 per ton. That is accretive to what we currently have, which is about $22 per ton, right? And so that is the fundamental reason why we're enabling ourselves to phase our approach to something that is closer to 20, 30, 40,000 tons per day.
Good. Okay. What's obviously the next step for you at the moment?
Yeah.
Oh, you're doing this PA that
Yeah.
you've got out by the end of the year. I guess one of the main things with these quite large deposits, I know you're doing this phased approach, is actually who's actually supporting you and what the capital structure looks like and your ability to carry on funding this thing. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the cap structure and what that's looking like.
Sure. Why don't I start with the program, and then I can talk about the cap structure,
Yeah.
because it is kind of correlated, as you can imagine. Use of proceeds, a strong use of proceeds always attracts good money.
Yep.
Separate from what I've just talked about, we made a new discovery at West Goodspeed back in December, and since then we have drilled 17 holes, and this is adjacent to the project envelope. 17 holes, of which 12 we've released, and we've outlined effectively an envelope of about 800 meter strike of at surface mineralization of about 0.5% copper equivalent over widths of about 130 to 200 meters.
Okay.
So that's very significant. These are above average global copper mining grades at surface with very good widths. And so we're going to be releasing another 5 holes that we anticipate as soon as we get back from the labs, perhaps in another 4 to 6 weeks. And that hopefully will extend the strike. Right now it's open laterally and to depth. These next 5 holes are going to be testing the trend towards the northwest, which we're getting higher and higher and higher in grades, and we're also extending the boundaries, which are fault driven, wider and wider and wider intercepts. And then we're also going to be testing, we've tested already at depth, and we sent those to assays as well. So very exciting around West Goodspeed. It's something that already is around 800 meters and could potentially be bigger, and if so, that is going to add multiple size tonnage to that 1 7-kilometer district to the north that we've already done, Red Dog and Northwest Expo. So. Yeah. All that to say, the use of proceeds is going to be defined by how we believe how much more we can ascend laterally and at depth, or whether we just go right into the resource estimation, which can then inform a quite different project, we believe, because of the amount of size and tonnage and grade that we're seeing there.
Yeah, it's a tricky one with this, because it's, in terms of, obviously you've got the PA coming out, but it seems so prospective in terms of
Yep.
the results that you're getting.
Yep.
Is that, do you really want to start drawing lines in the sand in terms of valuation
Yep.
and NAV and whatnot, or MPVs? But because really it sounds like you need to do a hell of a lot more drilling, because
Yep.
this thing seems pretty big, right?
So I agree with both
Yeah.
questions, and it's been one that's debated at the board level for a number of months now, and I think the conclusion is putting out a PEA at this point in time probably most importantly exemplifies the low-cost nature of the district because of the access to infrastructure. Okay. So we're on the northern end of the Vancouver Island. There's a perception, which is farthest from reality, that you can't permit projects on Vancouver Island. We've now provided evidence that that's in fact opposite. We've gotten our permits in record times, 14 weeks instead of 18 months to 24 months.
Yeah, and we've spoken in the past about your relationship with the local community and the way that you're going about the permitting as well, which is fantastic.
Correct, and the reason why there's all this positive attention is because all that infrastructure has already been built for a project, a mine of the size that we're contemplating, the Island Copper Mine, which was last run by BHP. So all the roads, the power, the town, the port, the infrastructure, the access is all there within a 5 to 10 kilometer radius. And that does not get reflected concretely unless you put economic parameters around it, right? So our mining costs are going to be extremely low, comparatively speaking, to a lot of other projects out there. Our G&A costs are going to be low because you don't have to build towns, you don't have to build camps for these sorts of things.
You're not super high in altitude or anything like that.
We're at sea level, right? We're not building massive desalination plants, right? We've got an excess of rainfall over 2.5 meters a year, right? So, people ask us, are you expecting a massive capital expenditure blowout here? And the answer is, it is going to increase, I can guarantee you that, but it's not going to increase at the size as you see some of these bigger projects in arid regions being developed and exploding in capex, because it's driven by desalination plants, which we know are billions and billions of dollars of expenditures. And we, again, are in a region that has an excess fresh water as opposed to lack thereof. So, I do think it's really important to put just the economic parameters around this thing, whilst I understand and we appreciate that A lot of our success in the market today has been because the success of our drill bit and our exploration program. And so that's why we are going to continue absolutely to go after West Goodspeed in terms of extending that strike length. Within Northwest Expo itself, that already defined resource, we are currently drilling out for the causative intrusion of that high-grade intercept that we talked about before. I think, oh sorry, I apologize, I don't think we have talked about this. As part of our program in October of last year, we actually hit an intercept at Northwest Expo of about 135 meters of 2.1 grams per ton at surface.
Wow, okay.
Within the porphyry lithocap.
Yeah.
So clearly we're going after that causative intrusion right now. This is something that attracted big investors like Franklin Templeton to invest in us in December. It's something that we believe is going to be the residual of something much, much, much bigger that's coming from either the southeast or at depth. So we're testing those theories today as we speak, which obviously we hope yields positive results over the next couple of months. So all that to say is, yes, we understand going into the study phase has its challenges as it relates to confining the project, but we are not confining the project. We're just showing people the solution to the capital intensity equation that we have been associated with throughout.
Okay, because this, I think this is it. There's still so much to be learned about the geology of the rocks that you're in your license here, and you're hitting into some high grade zones, and it's looking very promising. So I guess should people really be thinking this as a development story, or it seems really still like an exploration story, which I think, like we were saying before, is really where the most value is actually being granted at the moment. So in terms of a timeline, looking further forward to final investment decision, bankable studies, or getting into production, I guess it's quite tough at the moment, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing. Yeah. But really, I think surely the value here is actually putting more holes in the ground and really understanding what you have.
So, I don't know if your viewership knows my background, but I'm a metallurgist, but I spent circa 2000 to 2020 in investment banking. I ran CIBC's multiple programs for CIBC Global Investment Bank, and my takeaway probably from the entire experience is copper and gold porphyries is where the future is at. Most of the copper in the world comes from porphyries, and gold is a critical currency. So that's where we are right now. Yeah. But the second thing I took away is that you never want to be only positioned with one lever to pull, right? You want to be relevant at every point in the cycle. You don't want to be only relevant at the top of the cycle where there's FOMO mentality, which will get there. There's no doubt all these projects that have any possibility of getting developed all will be very happy when we get there. But during that period of time, we have to be relevant at every single point of that cycle. And for us, it absolutely lies within exploration, because we know the impact that exploration can have, and it has had on us. But we also have to be moving the project forward for other reasons, most of which being that we do have a real project that should be a mine very, very soon. So a lot of the stakeholder support, a lot of the support that we have, a lot of the landholders' political support is pretty much conditional on getting this project up and running as soon as possible, right? So we have to be cognizant of multiple factors that, by the way, will get rewarded at that part of the cycle where everyone is hoping that we're going to be. But in the meantime, yes, I take your point. Exploration, drill bits, that drives value, that drives excitement. I can assure our shareholders right now that given that 5 people, including myself, own approximately 45% of the company, dilution is a big consideration at any point in time, and we always measure ourselves against if we issue $1 of equity, we would expect to have the potential of getting a 2 to 3 times return on that dollar pretty quickly. Obviously, nothing is guaranteed, but we all know how long some of these programs take in terms of some of the long-dated development programs, and so to be able to allocate capital in a thoughtful and methodical way around both opportunities has always been a strategic imperative of ours at Northisle.
Okay, good. No, it's good that you're thinking along those lines in terms of where you're adding value. Look, I guess the main thing is what can we be looking forward to? Say, for example, we're sitting here in 12 months' time at Beaver Creek. What do you want to be able to tell me that you've achieved?
So in progressive stepwise function, starting from probably in the next couple of weeks, 4 to 6 weeks, when we get assays back, we were looking for an extension. That is our goal to the currently 800 meters of West Goodspeed, our new discovery, and we've showed incredible success thus far, especially going towards the northwest. The second thing is I want to make sure that people understand that this is a big project, right? We only use 600 million tons of 1 billion tons of our global resources. So our global resources will now show a consolidation of the projects together to inform the PEA moving forward. The PEA then, I guess, is going to be the next step. Beyond that, I apologize. Northwest Expo results will obviously inform the PEA, but it will also give some a glimpse as to what the causative intrusion, where the causative intrusion is being vectored, has been vectored into. So that it will come after the West Goodspeed results. And then finally, as it relates to the PEA, we will have completed it most likely at the end of this year and have an early announcement for next year. And I do think this will be a seismic change in people's perception of our project, because I think everyone understands what Mount Milligan is doing for Centerra and the cash flow that it's providing. But to be able to crack that nut of capital intensity while still having that very expansive cash flowing project in the future is going to be a little bit of a game changer.
Right, obviously we're in a period at the moment where we're at all-time high gold prices, copper price has gone up, it's above $4 again now. We're also in an environment where we're starting to see a lot more M&A. We've seen obviously BHP taken over Filo, we've seen a Cisco get taken out. There's also been Centamin in Egypt has just been taken over by Anglo Gold Ashanti. The market's heating up a bit, and I think, I guess the easiest comparison would, in terms of copper, would be obviously Filo and Lundin with BHP. So obviously the scale of what you're trying to achieve here, how does that lend to you potentially now starting to look for partners to actually help you develop this?
Sure, it's obviously a very, very favorable environment, right? We've been in a part of the cycle where, for the most part, it's been risk adverse, and through the deals that you just mentioned, Filo being effectively a $4 billion acquisition for a project that probably won't be mined up for many, many years to come, and a lot more money needs to be spent. A Cisco deal was interesting enough. That is the first competitive process that I've seen. I think the circular came out yesterday, and there were 3 people in that bidding process for a company for an asset rather that was already 50% owned by the winning bidder. Yeah. So that does insinuate to me that we are getting a little bit more into risk-tolerant atmosphere. So that's obviously coming, and that is what is going to drive that sort of second half of the cycle around a much more active environment. From our perspective, I think what we've learned from a lot of these examples is that partnership is absolutely critical in order to successfully drive a project forward. And so for us, we are absolutely looking at aligned partnership so that we can, we always have been looking for aligned partnerships, but it's specifically to advance this project and our initiatives and our strategies forward expeditiously. We believe we have set the framework for good consent-based approach, set the framework for a good economic project. We've set an incredible framework for the exploration upsides across our 35-kilometer porphyry district. We believe that it really is the trifecta in a very safe mining jurisdiction for these types of partnership discussions to evolve. I think if there's the perception that a single asset junior company can do it themselves, go it alone, and be successful, I think it mostly will be ego-driven, and it's probably something that does not serve its stakeholders, rights holders, landholders favorably. No,
I completely agree with that actually, and I think, and I know we mentioned it earlier, but I think one of the real key differences with yourselves compared to a lot of the projects that are being built in South America is this altitude issue, and we spoke about it, but that for me is makes it very much more desirable to be working on sea level and all the infrastructure in place that you were talking about earlier than having to really blow out a capex somewhere else.
So absolutely. There's altitude issues. There's freshwater issues, right? Every project has their strengths and weaknesses, and you mentioned Filo being potentially a conflict of ours. No, every project is different. Every project has its challenges. Altitude, being bordering on two countries, Argentina and Chile, et cetera, right? But one thing I can take away from the Filo example is that they came out with a reasonable PEA sometime in 2017, which I think was challenging just given all the things that you just described. And then they ended up going for the glory and going deep and going after the deep buried porphyry, which cost them $20 to $30 million to find proof of concept, which obviously then spiraled into the BHP initial investment in the final takeover just a few weeks ago. So from our perspective, we're not going to, I can guarantee we're not going to spend $20-30 million going for the deep buried targets that we have, which is Pemberton Hills. Pemberton Hills is 6.5 kilometer by 1.5 kilometer lithocap. It is absolutely enormous. It's only 7 kilometers away from our project. It's tilted. We have done a number of studies around clay sampling, geophysics, and even drilling around this. This is drill ready, but I can tell you that this is a big boy project. It's marked from a size perspective to a Las Palambras or a Batahiju. So with that in mind, I think partnerships is a very good concept. It's something that we can draw from each other's strengths and weaknesses, and something that we will be looking to progress.
Good. All right. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing it.
Appreciate
Sam,
it.
thank you.
Yeah, very nice to meet you again, Peter.